Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into the strategic side of things for adaptive sports and adaptive physical education. We'll just call it APHE. Specifically, we're looking at higher education, colleges, universities. Our source material is basically a high-level briefing aimed at university sports administrators, directors.
Right.
So this isn't just theory. It's about what needs to happen now, compliance, strategy, the actual structural changes required.
Exactly.
And the core question really is whether these institutions are actually ready, strategically speaking, for the students they already have.
And, well, the driving force behind all this APHE discussion, it comes down to sports equity and social inclusion.
Yeah. Okay.
It's this fundamental idea, really non-negotiable, that people with disabilities have the same right to exercise, to compete, to be part of university sports life.
Just like any other student.
Just like anyone else. And importantly, this isn't about being nice or doing a favor. It's viewed as a mandatory service.
And those hard numbers you mentioned really underscore why it's moved beyond philosophy.
Oh, absolutely. Let's look at the demographics in higher ed right now.
Yeah.
You hear a lot about falling student numbers overall, right? The whole declining birth rate issue.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
But, and this is the key thing, the number of students with identified special educational needs, that's actually rising every year.
Rising, despite the overall trend.
Yes. We're talking currently over 16,000 nationwide. And it's heading towards 20,000.
Wow.
And you combine that with universities feeling enrollment pressure. Well, the sources show they're actively recruiting differently.
How so?
They're taking in more specialized groups, sometimes whole classes, from special education vocational programs, especially feeding into departments like culinary arts, hospitality, service industries.
Okay, so let's connect those dots. Fewer students overall, so you're bringing in more students with identified needs. What does that actually do to the PE departments? What's the impact?
It creates some pretty significant risks, and often invisible ones.
Yeah.
Risks that, frankly, most university PE staff just aren't trained for.
What kinds of risks? What are the main disabilities we're talking about?
The biggest group is students with learning disabilities. Then you've got autism spectrum disorders, and also emotional or behavioral disorders.
And you said invisible.
Mostly, yes. The key word is internal. These aren't usually obvious physical things needing, say, a ramp. They need changes in how you teach, how you communicate, the expectations you set in the environment.
Okay. And why is that invisibility so risky, specifically in a PE class?
Well, think about processing issues or sensory challenges. A student with an emotional disorder might take feedback about being late or not doing something right as this huge personal attack. It can be overwhelming.
Right.
Or someone with autism might really struggle with knowing where their body is in space, proprioception. Or maybe the noise and chaos of a gym during a team sport is just complete sensory overload.
And that can look like something else entirely to an untrained eye.
Exactly. It comes out looking like behavioral problems. Refusal to participate, arguing, shutting down.
So the teacher might think it's just defiance.
Right. Laziness, insubordination. And that leads to conflict. We've seen really tragic outcomes in the past documented in these sources. Awful situations like student suicide after a confrontation over something seemingly minor like being late.
Oh, wow.
And even tragically fatalities during mandatory fitness testing. It just hammers home how critical teacher awareness is.
Yeah.
It's literally life and death sometimes.
Yeah.
They need training for internal and external disabilities.
That context, that alone should be driving change. But you're saying there's also a legal hammer here.
There is. And this is what university administrators really need to grasp. It's not just good practice, it's the law.
Okay.
The special education law, Article 38 specifically, calls adaptive physical education a necessary service.
Necessary service, like housing or exam accommodations?
Precisely. It's an entitlement for the student, which means, and this is crucial, any university just handing out waivers, exemptions from PE, simply because the student has a disability, they're actually breaking the law.
They're breaking the law.
Yes. They think they're being accommodating, maybe, but they're actually denying a legally guaranteed service.
Okay, I have to push back slightly here. I get the mandate. But from an admin perspective, providing proper adaptive PE, that costs money, equipment, maybe more staff, specialized training, isn't just giving the waiver the easier path, even if it's technically illegal?
It absolutely is the easier path. That's the core of the problem, the gap between policy and practice. But it's fundamentally discriminatory.
How so?
Think about the student's journey. These kids often grew up in K-12, where inclusion is standard. Now something like 96% of students with special needs or in regular classrooms.
Right. They expect it.
They expect it. They get to university wanting to take basketball or tennis or whatever PE class looks interesting, and then they're told, nope, sorry, you need a doctor's note, or here, you can just sit out.
That sends a pretty clear message.
It sends the message. You are the problem we need to exempt, not our environment is the problem we need to fix. Which leads us to needing a whole shift in how we even think about disability. We need to ditch these old models.
Okay, what are these outdated models we need to avoid?
First, the charity model. This is where you see disability participation as like an inspirational story. Oh, look how brave they are. Or pity, they're so pitiful, let's help them.
How does that show up in PE?
It might mean giving the student some token role, like scorekeeper,
Yeah.
just so everyone else feels good. It's not real participation. It strips their dignity.
Okay, that's one. What's the second?
The medical model. This basically assumes anyone with a disability is always sick or in rehab. It defines them by what they can't do.
And in PE?
In PE, it might mean the professor only offers like remedial exercises completely separate from fun or sport. It's seeing any movement as just therapy. You wouldn't go up to someone jogging and say, oh, good job on your physical therapy.
You're right. Movement is part of life.
Not just medicine. Exactly. So instead, we have to fully embrace the human rights model.
Which
It
says,
says physical activity, sport, movement. It's a basic human right, like freedom of speech or assembly. Even German law, apparently, recognizes sport this way.
interesting.
It means participation must be provided. The university's job isn't to fix the student. It's to fix the environment, the instruction, the barriers. It's about dignity and shared decisions.
That human rights framing is really clear. So if that's the legal standard and the ethical standard, where's the breakdown? You mentioned a training gap earlier, especially in higher ed compared to K-12.
It's a huge gap, and it's almost entirely about institutional culture. In K-12, teachers generally get trained, often it's mandated, funded centrally. They learn how to teach a blind student or someone in a wheelchair in a regular PE class.
Okay.
But university faculty, well, they often resist this kind of mandatory training. It bumps up against the idea of university self-governance, academic freedom.
They feel it infringes on their autonomy, training outside their specific research field.
That seems to be the feeling, yeah. So you get this crisis moment every single fall semester. A student comes in, fully integrated for 12 years in school PE,
Right.
and suddenly they meet a university professor who, because they haven't had the training, literally doesn't know what to do. So the professor panics, maybe throws up their hands,
And the student gets that illegal waiver.
and the student gets the waiver. That's where the system fails them. That's discrimination happening right there.
Are any universities getting this right? Pushing past that resistance?
Oh, definitely. The sources highlight some places, often public institutions, that are leading the way, proving it can be done.
Like what? What are they doing?
Some universities are now requiring mandatory training sessions for all their PE instructors before the semester starts, covering different disabilities, mobility, sensory issues, the works.
So they're tackling the faculty training gap head on.
Exactly. And one place even makes all first-year students, regardless of disability, spend an hour learning how PE classes will accommodate everyone.
That's interesting. Why involve all students?
It sends a powerful message, right? The university takes responsibility for inclusion, and everyone needs to understand how it works, whether that's adapting rules for a wheelchair user in basketball or using sound cues for a visually impaired runner. It normalizes accommodation.
Okay, so it's not just about the classes themselves. This extends out into the competitive side too, and even the facilities.
Absolutely, because if you don't have inclusion in the competitive arenas, you cut off a major pathway. Think about the all-university games. If disabled athletes can't compete there, properly integrated,
Coaches won't recruit them.
why would they? If there's no top-level university competition for them, it stunts the whole pipeline.
And what does that lack of accommodation look like in practice, in competitions?
Sometimes it's surprisingly basic things, like visually impaired swimmers. If there's no tapper, that pole used to signal the wall is coming,
They have to guess or just hit the wall.
or slow down massively. Or think about hearing-impaired sprinters. If there are no starting lights, only a gun, they have to wait to see everyone else leave the blocks.
Which costs them time, obviously.
Instantly puts them at a disadvantage. These aren't like insurmountable problems. They're failures to provide standard accommodations.
And then there's just getting into the venue and having a decent experience.
Right. Facility access is often the last hurdle. You look at big, new stadiums, even pro ballparks, they might technically have wheelchair seats.
But where are they?
Exactly. Often stuck in the worst spots. Terrible views, maybe covered up if it rains, miles from an accessible restroom. You're allowed in, but you're not getting an equal experience. It's inclusion on paper, but segregation in reality.
Which brings us back to that core message for the administrators, the why you should care part. It sounds like the goal needs to be a fundamental shift in how PE and university sports are even perceived.
Precisely. Sport can't just be seen as a luxury item, only for the naturally gifted athletes.
Right.
It can't be a decorative item, something nice to have. But the first thing, cut when money's tight.
Okay.
And crucially, it shouldn't be a consumable item, just a credit you have to get through, something passive.
So what should it be instead?
It needs to be positioned strategically as a necessity, like a daily item. Or maybe think of it as a nutritional supplement, something every student needs for their overall health and development.
And there's a bigger societal reason for that, too.
Absolutely. If students don't learn to value movement, health, and inclusive participation while they're at university, they're not going to suddenly start championing good sports policy when they graduate and become, decision makers in society.
That makes sense. Okay, so given all this, the legal side, the training gaps, the need for a mindset shift, what's the concrete path forward? What should administrators actually do?
The sources lay out some clear strategic steps. First big one, money. Reallocate resources. The bulk of it, like maybe over half, should go towards physical literacy and grassroots engagement, not just elite teams. Focus on where most students are, making basic participation inclusive.
Okay, prioritize the foundation. What else?
Facility optimization. Make targeted improvements. Things like buying mobile pool lifts so swimming pools are actually accessible. Simple, practical stuff.
Right. Makes sense.
Third, improve the transition and feedback loop. Universities need to ask incoming students with special needs what they require. Don't wait for problems. Use simple tools, online surveys, maybe Google Forms. Ask all identified special needs students every year. What PE did you do in high school? How satisfied were you? What do you need here? Be proactive.
Get the information up front.
Exactly. Fourth, collaboration. Work with the university's own Disability Resource Center. And look outwards, too. Maybe use that university social responsibility angle.
Wow.
Partner with local community groups. Offer adapted programs for, say, local elderly people or folks in care homes. It expands the department's role beyond just students. Makes it a community resource.
Interesting. Broadens the impact.
And finally, a necessary policy push. Administrators need to lean on the big governing bodies, like for the all-university games, to require integrated participation. Make sure the rules and accommodations are there so disabled athletes can compete fairly and visibly.
So really wrapping this up, this deep dive seems to show that the future success of university sports isn't really about finding the next Olympic champion.
No.
It's much more about whether these institutions are willing to fully step up to their educational mission, putting inclusion and equity front and center, not just chasing wins or money.
And we have to keep reminding ourselves, these university students, they're basically the last group getting formal education before they go out into the world.
Right, the final stage.
If the university doesn't teach them the value of movement, of participation, of equity now, well, that failure pretty much guarantees they won't support good, inclusive sports policies later on.
Okay, final thought then, something to leave our listeners with. If you think about technologies we use every day, like voice input on our phones, or screen readers, or even predictive text. Many of those came about because they were needed to break down barriers for people with visual or hearing impairments.
Necessity driving innovation.
Exactly. So the provocative question is, what amazing social innovations, what new ways of functioning, maybe even what athletic advancements might we unlock if universities truly, fully, strategically committed to supporting disabled student participation in every aspect of sport? What potential are we leaving untapped?
That's the real strategic investment to think about.